Okay, today I'll show the examination or the assessment of the higher cerebral function. Really, the higher cerebral function, first of all, consists of the assessment of the level of consciousness. Consciousness means that the patient is aware and alert for both self and environment and is able to respond to internal changes, for example, hunger, and for external changes. Really, the assessment of the level of consciousness, the patient may take one of the following forms that will be described just a few moments later. By the level or the stimuli by which the patient can be aroused. Just like this, if we start the examination and greet the patients, and the patient is responding to you, open his or her eyes, look at you, and responding very well to stimuli. This state, we call it an alertness, and the patient is alert. So I'll show you how to assess the level of consciousness. Assalamu alaikum. Zain inshallah. Okay, so the patient is reacting to me. He's open his eyes and look at me and responding to my questions. So the patient is alert. Second form of disturbed level of consciousness may take the form of what we call it lethargic patient. Lethargic patient, just like sleepy patient, he is responding, but usually to a louder voice than this voice, and the patient open his eyes, look at you, responding to stimuli, but in a sleepy manner, and soon will return back into its basic status once the stimuli is completed. This is what we call it the lethargy. So we have to greet the patient in a louder voice. Instead of normal voice, we have to increase the volume of voice. The third form of altered level of consciousness is what we call it obtundation. And the patient is obtunded when he is somewhat confused and responding to you, open his eye and look at you when you shake him or her, just like when you're shaking a patient. He's turning and looking at you, but once the stimuli also is completed, the patient returns back into his or her own basic status. This is obtundation. The fourth form of the altered level of consciousness is what we call it stuporous. The patient is stuporous and the state is stupor when the patient is unable to respond to any stimuli, seems to lost his consciousness, but responding only to strong stimuli. Really, the strong stimuli, we have many applications for that, but these measures are usually needs a permission from the examination committee at the time of exam, and may take the form of pressure at the supraorbital ridges, just like this pressure, or with a blunt object, hard blunt object at the sternum, or squeezing of the Achilles tendon. These measures are considered painful to the patient, and a patient with this measure, if he is responding to them, so the patient is stuporous. Otherwise, if the patient unable to respond even to this measure, this state we call it coma, and the patient became comatose. Really, the disturbance of the level of consciousness had many causes, and the candidate should know about them very carefully.